Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Create and Consume, a podcast about what we make, watch, and buy in the era of digital content. I'm your host, Austen Tosone. I have personally always been drawn towards long form content from my blogging roots to launching this podcast last year. I am a fan of content that is chock full of nuance, detail, explanation, and entertainment. I have always really respected the work that goes into creating long form content, from the production value to the actual time spent on the content itself. And even as a consumer, I personally get the most satisfaction out of consuming long form content. So today I want to talk about why I think 2025 is going to be the year of long form content. I want to talk about the different types of long form content that exist and some of the benefits of taking the time to invest in this content format. Before we get into today's topic, let's do a little create and consume. Now, I was actually, unfortunately, deathly ill last week. I think I caught the stomach flu, and I'm just so grateful to be feeling better now and to be sitting here and talking to you all. So, I didn't create a ton last week, but one thing that I did create because I wanted to still meet my deadline was a partnership on Instagram Reels with Dove. This is actually my third time working with Dove now, and I was so excited that they reached out to partner with me again. So, the product that I was promoting, I actually do have it here on my desk because I was using it just recently, and it is the Cooling Whole Body Deo. It is an all over deodorant spray. So I've seen spray deodorant before where you can just spray your underarms, but this one you can actually spray on your body, and not just on your body, but you can use it over clothing. And I was like, this is such a smart idea because sometimes I will do a Peloton workout and then want to run out for like a quick errand before I come back and do my full, body shower and everything and go about my day. So I actually decided to use that as the concept for the reel, and I recruited Taylor, my best friend, to help me shoot this. Thank you again, Taylor, for dedicating your time to the cause. So I will link the Instagram reel down below, and I'm also going to link the Whole Body Deo because it actually is an amazing product that I probably would have ended up purchasing myself had I not partnered on this campaign. But yeah, the concept of the reel was I was working out, Taylor texts and asks to grab a coffee, and then of course I just want to, I don't have time to shower or whatever. I am just using the spray all over so that I can make myself more presentable to actually go meet her for a coffee. So fewer canceled plans, more flexibility, perfect for someone with an on-the-go lifestyle. And I do actually run after the deodorant in the video. It's pretty funny, but you'll have to see it for yourself. So I will leave that link down in the show notes. And as far as what I'm consuming last week, I watched the Grammys last night. And funny enough, actually, during the Grammys was a commercial for the Dove Whole Body Deo. And I was looking at Andrew, I was like, I just did an ad for that. And like, here it is on the Grammys. That's so crazy. And just a reminder, if a brand has money to have an ad during the Grammys, during the Super Bowl, during all the things, they probably have money to pay you as a content creator. So don't forget to advocate for yourself and get your bag. Okay, so the Grammys. I actually feel like this is one of the best award shows I've watched in a while. I think there were a lot of reasons for that, and I will start by saying I'm not an avid award show watcher. Usually I am looking at the red carpet images and that's about it, but I actually watched about 2 hours of the Grammys last night. I think I went to bed around 10. First of all, they were obviously acknowledging the wildfires in Los Angeles from this past month. I think the wildfires are actually 100% contained now, which is really, really good news. So they did some donation call outs, and they also did some commercials spotlighting small local businesses in LA, which I thought was a great move. And then in terms of the Grammys themselves, all of the performances were so insanely good. I thought Sabrina Carpenter's performance was incredible. I loved the compilation they did of all of the candidates for the new artist title. And there were some incredible historic moments. Beyonce won Best Country Album and she won Album of the Year. Chappell Roan won Best New Artist, and I love how she used her speech to advocate for fair payment and for healthcare for artists, and talked about the struggles of being an artist at the whim of a really powerful label. And of course, Taylor Swift was there. I'm always on high alert to see what she's doing. She presented the award to Beyonce, and she was there in this absolutely stunning red dress. Her hair and makeup looked great. And I love Taylor. Sometimes her red carpet style is a little bit like there's one thing I would change. Yesterday, not a thing that I would alter. A plus plus. So shout out to the Grammys. Honestly, it was a night for the girls, and I was just here to see all of the girls winning. And as always, guys, I want to hear from you and hear what you are creating and consuming as well. So you can leave a comment on the episode if you're watching on YouTube. You can leave a comment on Spotify. You can leave comments over on Instagram and TikTok at Create and Consume Pod on both. But yeah, tell me what we're up to. Tell me what we are reading, watching, making. I absolutely love to hear it. Okay, so with that all being said, let's get into today's main topic of conversation, which is the long form content renaissance. And I think we need to start this episode by doing a little pulse check on the state of social media right now. I actually did a whole episode close to when I launched the podcast. I think it was maybe episode 6 or 7 that was called Social Media State of the Union. That was kind of the most recent episode that I did where I shared my updated thoughts on each one of the platforms. And I thought it would be helpful to do kind of like a condensed version of it here. To put it simply, social media, it's kind of all over the place right now. That is obviously a big blanket statement, but if you look at all of the different platforms together right now, truly everyone seems to be having their own unique issues. I think I'm like about to delete or deactivate X. Half the stuff I see on that platform is so crazy and makes no sense, and I feel like I shouldn't be watching. Obviously, there have been so many changes and updates to Meta, from the removal of fact checking to the random changing of the grid from square to 4x5, the strange disappearance of some of the hashtags on the platform, even like Pinterest, which I consider to be kind of the unicorn and the non-problem child of all social media, is having issues with the platform, being overrun with different AI images and showing strange AI generated images that don't quite make any sense over actual, personally created content. And of course, there is the TikTok of it all. So as of right now, when I'm recording this episode, it's February 3rd. TikTok is back. It's been restored. Service has been restored, so to speak. But this basically just put the ban on pause for now. So TikTok does still need to figure out a way to either sell the US based portion of its business, which it does not look like it wants to do, or to divest and, kind of work out some kind of deal where US has at least partial ownership. The list of who might be able to buy TikTok, I think, is kind of small, all things considered. I think there are so many questions about who's qualified to buy it and who can afford to buy it. There's just so much uncertainty all around on various social media platforms that it literally makes my skin crawl. And I have been in this industry for over a decade. And at this point, we will always find a platform to go to. We will always find places to create and to share content. So I am optimistic that we will continue to find ways to do that. Obviously, the creator economy and the influencer industry, it is just at the point now where it can't be ignored, where billions of dollars are generated from what we do every single day. And there are so many jobs that are connected to this specific industry. And even if we have to adapt and even if we have to adjust, we will still be okay. But it definitely makes you kind of question some things and want to rearrange certain things as well. It is kind of funny though, because to me, TikTok has always been the platform that I've kind of understood the least, just because it's the newest one and the one I have kind of the least experience with, which is funny because it's one of my larger platforms. And for some reason, ever since it got banned and came back, I suddenly have all of these ideas that are very TikTok specific. And I'm suddenly really invested in trying to put them all out. So I don't know what that says about me as a person, probably says something about my attachment style or whatever, but I think there was already a big shift towards more long form content before, I don't know, before January 2025 happened, let's call it that. For example, Reels and YouTube Shorts can now accommodate videos up to 3 minutes long each. Before, the limit on Reels was 90 seconds and the limit on YouTube Shorts was 60 seconds. So this shows that even within the short form platforms, they are interested in that longer content. And the big goal for every social media platform is how can we get people to spend the most time possible on our platform? So it makes sense that they would want to be pushing longer form content. For me, though, there is still one big flaw when it comes to longer reels, longer TikToks, and longer shorts, which is that 99% of people are consuming that content on their mobile device. And it's not as easy to swipe away to quickly check a message and then remember to come back. It's not like you can check your phone while you're still watching the video, or if you do, you might miss something along the way, because it will always have that kind of mobile first experience to it and attachment to it. I think it makes it harder for people to really stay engaged throughout the whole long form piece of content, if we are even calling 3 minutes long form. And if we take social media, quote unquote, aside for a minute, the typical platforms, there are also other platforms adjacent to social media that have become more and more popular in the last 5 years. For example, podcasts. I mean, hello, hi, I am a new podcaster as of May 2024. I shared some of these stats in a previous episode, but according to Pod News, right now there are upwards of 5 million podcasts on Spotify. However, of those 5 million podcasts, 44% of all podcasts have fewer than 3 episodes published, and only 720,000 podcasts have more than 10 episodes. And out of those 720,000 podcasts, only 156,000 are releasing a weekly episode. But even still, 150,000 podcasts releasing weekly episodes on Spotify. That is so much content. And I just want to take a minute to say that if you are listening to my podcast when you have literally hundreds of thousands of options to choose from, I am extremely grateful for you being here. And that is not something that I take lightly. There are also platforms that have come up recently like Substack. I feel like everyone I know is starting a Substack, and I love being subscribed to Substack newsletters. If you're not familiar, Substack is basically an email service provider where you can create and send email blasts to your audience, and they also offer a paid tier. So you can launch a Substack that is free and use it to collect emails and send, updates and things like that. Or if you're interested in creating paywall content, which is actually something I teach in my digital course, the Influencer Income Accelerator, you can actually put a monthly fee on your Substack subscribers as well. So you could charge like $5 a month or $50 a year for people to have a paid subscription to your Substack. I have a lot of mixed thoughts on paywall content. I will link a video in the show notes that I did on YouTube where I talk about why I chose to close my Patreon membership, which was my paywall content subscription that I had from, I want to say 2022 to 2024. I have a lot of thoughts in that video about the upkeep when it comes to paywall content and the expectations that people have when they are personally paying you money to receive that exclusive content from you. But there is so much benefit to building an email list and growing an audience that way. I personally have a free email list hosted on ConvertKit, or it used to be called ConvertKit. Now it's called Kit. And you can sign up for that on my website, which is austentosone.com. I will also leave the link in the show notes. I've talked about podcasts. I've talked about Substack. I also want to mention blogs. And I've had my blog since 2012. It is probably the most important part of my business. Like when I look back on everything, it's so crazy to see old posts that I wrote back in 2012, 2013. In some ways, it feels like it was just yesterday, but it really is almost like this relic and this record book of my life in so many ways. A big reason for that is for, I would say, the first 4 years of me having my blog, I kind of approached it Tumblr style and used it almost a little bit as like a diary, but obviously a public facing diary. So, there might be like one or two snarky quotes in there if you happen to know someone who did something mean to me at that time, that type of thing. But then once I started interning at magazines, specifically Nylon in 2015, I really started to learn how to write for a reader, and I started to get a lot more intentional about the type of content I was creating for the blog, the type of articles I wanted to write, and really keeping in mind who I was speaking to and who I was trying to help through that process. My blog now is also something that generates revenue for my business. I'll talk a little bit more about how it generates revenue later in this episode. But the other great thing about a blog is that there's no algorithm standing in the way between me and my audience. I can certainly do things to make it easier for my ideal reader to find my blog in the first place. And, even where there are not specific algorithms blocking me, obviously Google can get updated and change how it ranks content from time to time. People might come in and write better blog posts than what you've written, and you could drop in the rankings for search. But it's so nice to be able to fully design and customize something that's completely yours. Like, even when you think about, I was just talking earlier about how Instagram changed their grid layout to all 4:5 images now instead of 1-to-1 ratio. On a blog, you get to choose what size your images are and what the layout looks like and what fonts you're using. Like, you can really customize so much. You can really make it tailored to exactly how you would want it to look. So that's something I absolutely love about the ownership that comes with having a blog. Last but not least is YouTube channels. And I launched my YouTube channel in 2017. I had been watching YouTube for years and years and years and years. I remember first using YouTube to look up hair curling tutorials. I remember watching Jenna Marbles, Zoella, so many of the OG YouTubers, and just thinking it was the most fun thing in the world to basically have like your own TV channel in a sense. And I had always really wanted to start one. I just was really concerned about production value because back then it was all about having a DSLR camera. And even when I tried to shoot on my nice camera, sometimes the background would be blurry, the sound was terrible, the color was a little out of whack. And luckily, the equipment that we use has gotten a lot more sophisticated in the last few years, but I have also learned a lot, and I did go through the struggles of teaching myself how to make better content. But, if I hadn't made those first handful of kind of crappy videos, I obviously wouldn't be where I am now. So I'm super grateful that I decided to just start. And honestly, if you chose to just start now, though, your videos would still probably look and sound 10 times better than mine did back when I first started. And YouTube is incredibly powerful as well because it is a social media platform. So you can subscribe to accounts, you can see content that they post, but it's also so great for discovery because you can look up anything and anyone on YouTube. I'm constantly using it to teach myself little mini tech tutorials that I need to learn for my business about how different softwares work or how my camera works. And I love to watch content on YouTube. Sometimes I watch sit down videos with tips and strategies. Sometimes I'm watching vlogs. Sometimes I'm watching just random deep dives that I think are interesting. There's a million different directions you can go in with a YouTube channel. And I would say, in terms of the ease for how easy it is to start on these different long form platforms, blog and starting a Substack or any kind of newsletter, I would say would probably be the easiest because out of all the different content formats, this one, which is just text on screen, is the easiest to get going with. Obviously, you might want to incorporate like some images from time to time or maybe even some audio messages, but overall, it's really easy to teach yourself just the skills of managing a blog and managing a Substack. And it's a really low stakes thing for you to produce because you're essentially just writing on your laptop, right? Like you could be typing with your hair in a crazy messy bun. You could be anywhere in the world. You don't need to worry about the sound or your location or anything like that. It's really easy to take on the go and it's really easy to produce when you're just starting out. I would say second on that list is a podcast, which if you're just choosing to do an audio only podcast, that is going to be the easiest way to go about doing that. All you need is a good quality mic. I literally bought this one on Amazon for like $50 if I had to guess. I'll link my mic in the show notes, by the way. I actually have a whole little list on my Amazon storefront with my different filming equipment, but I will link the mic in the show notes just to make it easy. And honestly, if you're doing an audio only podcast, that is also a much easier production value than it ever has been. You could literally record a podcast on the voice notes on your phone and you could use CapCut, well, as long as we still have CapCut, or iMovie or something to edit it, and then you can just upload it to Spotify. It is Super easy to create the most basic version of a podcast. Obviously, if you're interested in growing a podcast, you can always invest in better equipment and learn how to mix sounds and things like that later on. I don't do any of that personally. This is just my mic plugged into my laptop with a little USB-C cord, and that's it. And if you want to add video to your podcast as well, you can do so through different recording softwares. You could just record on your camera or your phone. I personally record through Riverside, although I do use my iPhone camera to actually capture the video content because I find it to be much better quality than my MacBook built-in webcam. And when it comes to editing, truthfully, I just try to edit out my ums and uhs and also any sentences that I start and I don't know, maybe I sneeze or there's someone in the hallway or something like that. I really don't do a lot of super editing on the podcast. Riverside literally has a button where I can tap it. It's called AI Editor and it removes pauses and you can pick like the pace at which you want it to remove pauses. You could either make it highly edited or just have it cut out kind of the most basic pauses and stuff. Lately, I've been using that to get an initial cut of the episode, and I find that if I record for like an hour, when I do that, it'll usually remove between 9 to 11 minutes of basically just silence and ums and uhs. And then my other podcast editing hack is that I export that into iMovie, and then I edit in iMovie at 2x speed. So again, that's kind of my like low budget DIY method for how I can produce a podcast on my own. And then I would say YouTube requires the most effort, the most production value, because if you're going to be on camera, you might want to look a certain way, you might want to sound a certain way, you might want to have a clean, nice background or space to film. And that that is a lot to keep up with sometimes, which is one of the reasons why I have reinstated vlogs into my YouTube channel. And if anything, I've kind of made vlogs my main lens and focus for my channel, which I can talk more about. Because before I was doing that, I would sit in front of this rainbow bookcase that you see back behind me. I would have my hair and makeup all perfectly done, like full glam every single time. I would have a huge mic, I would have softbox lights, and it really was like a big production. And depending on what type of YouTube videos you might want to create, that might be something that you look into. But I definitely feel like once you get in a rhythm with YouTube, it becomes much easier to be consistent and to learn new skills and to really build your subscriber base on there. But it is not easy. I know a lot of people who start and stop YouTube who come back when they have a partnership or they come back for a few weeks and then they go away again. It's not easy to be consistent on YouTube, I will tell you that much. Okay, but so those are the 4 different types of long form content: podcasts, YouTube, blogs, and Substack/newsletter. And if you are a creator who has been really invested in short form for a few years and you want to diversify and pick up long form as well, I would say even having one of these long form platforms is a fantastic idea and can make a big difference. So I'm curious to hear from you guys. Which of these is your favorite type of long form content? Okay, I want to talk about some of the benefits of long form content for creators because I know it can seem intimidating, especially if you started out on short form and you are intimidated by long form or you think it seems like a lot of work. Personally, for me, sometimes long form ends up being less work even than short form somehow, but I think it depends on what you naturally feel good at. Like, I have always been a writer, I have always loved talking and being long winded. So obviously that's why I love long form content, and I have 3 weekly types, or no, 4, I guess, weekly types of long form content that I try my best to put out every single week, which are the 4 that we just talked through. But why I think it's worth it to invest in long form content? Well, number 1, as discussed at the top of this episode, social media is kind of a hot mess right now. And even though I am sure we'll come out of it and we'll find ways to push through whatever weirdness is going on social media right now, it still is important to take care of yourself and cover all of your bases, especially if this is a substantial portion of your income or if this is your full-time job. You can't put all of your eggs in the Mark Zuckerberg basket. You know what I mean? So obviously diversifying your platforms opens up more opportunities for you, not just monetarily, although there are obviously those that exist, but also to connect on a deeper level with your audience. And one thing that I've noticed just in conversation between content creators on different platforms is sometimes people will do videos where they showcase pay transparency, which is great. They'll show how much they made from like the TikTok Creator Fund or from YouTube Shorts and things like that. The one thing that I feel like people don't consider when they're creating that type of content is the value of a short form viewer compared to the value of a long form viewer. And this is one of the reasons why I don't really post a lot of shorts on my YouTube channel, because I don't really want to be a shorts first content creator. I want to be known for my long form content, because it allows me to develop such a deeper relationship with those who are actually watching me on YouTube, and because it pays substantially better. Just to give you a very ballpark example here, there might be a creator out there who on TikTok has an RPM of 10 cents, meaning that for every 1,000 views, they get paid 10 cents for that. But a long form YouTube content creator could have an RPM of $10 or $20. A lot of it does depend on your niche and what categories you create content within, but the hard and fast truth is that the RPMs are always higher on long form content. Yeah, when it comes to YouTube, I don't want to kill my retention or kill my RPM for my channel by focusing on viral shorts views, because most of my shorts viewers do not come over and watch my long form content. I've noticed within my analytics that they're very separate audiences. When you're swiping on a platform like TikTok or on YouTube Shorts or on Reels, you are consuming so much content. You might swipe and then swipe and then swipe. So you're only getting a very short impression of the person that you're watching. And, long form on YouTube now is considered anything over 3 minutes and 1 second. It doesn't feel like 3 minutes is a long time to spend with someone, but relative to a lot of the other short form content, it's a really long time. You rather have more people who are choosing to spend 3 minutes with you fully engaged than 3 seconds with you just to let the view count and then swiping away from your video and not engaging. We're not even talking about content that is 3 minutes long most of the time when we're talking about long form. We could be talking about content like a podcast or a YouTube video that's 10 minutes long, 20 minutes long, 30 minutes long, 40 minutes long. It could go on up to and over an hour. I personally listen to a lot of podcasts and watch a lot of YouTube videos that are like 30 minutes or longer. At this point, I feel like a podcast that is only quote unquote 30 minutes is kind of short compared to a lot of the other ones that I listen to. I don't know how long this particular episode of my podcast is going to end up being, but I've noticed the average length of my podcast is around 41 minutes. And I do think if I were ever taking on advertisers, that it could be closer to an hour once you factor in all of the different ads that you would include throughout an episode. But again, even if someone is only listening to the first 20 minutes of my podcast episode, that's 20 minutes they chose to spend with me. That's crazy. This, I think, is what differentiates those casual viewers who are swiping because an algorithm placed that content in front of them versus these more intentional, invested viewers who had to probably go to Spotify and type in the podcast name that they're looking for, or go to YouTube and click on the creator's profile who they were expecting to see a new video from. That's another big difference between algorithm controlled platforms like Instagram and TikTok and searchable platforms like a blog or a YouTube channel, which is the concept of user intent. When a user comes to a platform looking for something specific, they're a lot more likely to stick around and also take action on that thing, compared to someone who just has content thrust in front of them by the For You page or the Reels tab and wasn't necessarily looking for that content in the first place. User intent is something I think about a lot, and it's one of the reasons why when I'm writing a blog post or I'm creating a YouTube video, I do try to validate my topics through keyword research and see what are people actually looking for right now. I've talked about my influencer income streams before. I actually have a YouTube video where I broke down my 2024 income by percentage, so I'll leave that link in the show notes. But affiliates is typically the smallest portion of my income as a creator. However, I've noticed in the last few years, one way for me to make more recurring and consistent affiliate revenue, even if the numbers aren't too high on my end, is by including links in my long form content. Earlier in this podcast episode, I said I would link my microphone in the show notes. That's an affiliate link. So if you click on that link, I get a kickback from your purchase. If I'm writing a blog post and I mention a product of some kind, I can include an affiliate link there. And if someone is searching for white boots and I have a blog post about how to wear and style white boots, and then they see a pair that they actually like and they click to buy it, I still get that affiliate commission. That link hasn't expired because it was in an Instagram story. They didn't forget about it because they were scrolling on TikTok and they clicked on it and then never came back to it. It's like such a more seamless and connected process. And because you were reading it in a blog post or because you watched a YouTube video where you saw me wear the product or style it a certain way, you get more attachment to it, you build more trust around it, and you're more likely to take action on it later. So, in addition to maximizing user intent and thinking about what people are searching for when they actually choose to type something into the search bar and click on a particular video or click on a particular podcast episode, long form content also builds know, like, and trust with your viewers and listeners and readers. One could have a really high performing TikTok and you might watch that, let's just say 60-second reel and say, oh, this person seems funny, or oh, they seem nice. But it might take more than that one 60-second reel for you to then say, oh, I trust their recommendations, or yeah, I want to buy their course that they mentioned, or oh, I want to book them for a one-on-one consulting session for a thing. Like, you probably wouldn't do that from just watching one piece of content. But when someone chooses to come back to you week after week after week and spend more than like 10 minutes with you, if they're spending 20 minutes with you, if they're spending 30 minutes with you, if they are not just listening to your podcast, but they're watching your YouTube videos and they're reading your blog and they're subscribed to your newsletter, that is really substantial. That means that they're really there for more than just that one-off piece of content. And I think in the year 2025, we need to live in a world where we're thinking about a lot more than just one-off pieces of content. We need to think about how everything connects together. And it's one of the reasons why I know I talk about this all the time. So I apologize. I'm sure you've heard this a ton if you are a longtime listener of this podcast. But I did create a video last October for my YouTube channel where I talked about feeling boxed into my niche of content creator tips and why I wanted to branch out and become more of a lifestyle channel. And it's for this exact reason. It's because I wanted to build a personal brand. I wanted to be more than just an information hub. I wanted to be something that people felt comfortable with when they were watching me, that they got enjoyment from, that they got entertainment from, that they could get inspiration from. And I couldn't just do that while I was just spewing information. Long form content also allows you to show your personality, and it's so important that you get to take advantage of that and that you get to express your personality in more than just a 60-second video. There is an essay that I always come back to when I get on my soapbox and start talking about long form content. I haven't read the whole essay in a really long time, but it's written by Kevin Kelly, who is the founder or the co-founder of Wired. And the essay is called 1000 True Fans. And the premise of this essay is essentially that if you have 1000 true fans, whatever your art type is, say you're a content creator or you're a musician or you're a photographer or you're whatever, cinematographer, actor, pottery maker, glass blower. Now I'm just making things up, but whatever your art is, whatever your craft is, if you have 1000 true fans, you can make a living. And I think about this all the time. Even though I now have over 100,000 followers across all of my various social media platforms, I personally still feel like I'm building out my 1,000 true fans. In the essay, he kind of goes on to describe these true fans as people who will like stand in line for your CD. They'll buy your book in the paperback and the hardcover and the audiobook. They'll sign up for your email newsletter. They'll subscribe to your YouTube channel. They'll buy your digital course. Like all of those different things, because those 1,000 people truly love and believe in you. And I think there are so many content creators out there who probably can't tell you with certainty if they have their 1,000 true fans or not. But that is one of the gaps that long form content can close is, again, building that know, like, and trust, understanding someone's personality, getting nuance from them, getting details from them, learning more not just about certain strategies or things that they like to talk about, but occasionally getting glimpses into their life as well. And the other big benefit of long form content for the creator is I really do feel like you see a greater return on your investment. And make no mistake, creating long form content takes a ton of time. It is extremely time consuming, and I don't want to sugarcoat that or hide that. It's just the truth. However, I can tell you with so much confidence that when I do invest in my long form content, I get so much out of it. And that could be in the form of passive income, like from ads on my blog or from my YouTube channel. It could be from opportunities that I've been given, like speaking on panels or moderating discussions. And it even comes in the form of just like comments and messages that I get from people who watch my content and really feel like they get to know me. Because I try to be as authentic and transparent and everything as possible on here. But at the same time, I'm also like aware that I'm sitting down and I have a camera in front of me. And, it's not going to be exactly the same as it would be if you came over for coffee and we were just talking face to face. But I try to get it to as much of the same point as I possibly can so that it feels that way, because that is one of the things that I value most about the long form content I consume is I feel like I'm friends with the people. I feel like I could drop in on their day-to-day life and run into them at the coffee shop and just ask them a bunch of questions about what's going on in their life right now, or talk about what we're watching or what we're reading or what our summer travel plans are, or any number of things. And just to close us out here, I originally had an idea for a podcast episode that I wrote down literally when I first launched this podcast called Why I'm So Obsessed with Vlogs, but I didn't really feel like it warranted a full episode, so I pivoted and created this episode, which is the long form content renaissance. Hopefully you've enjoyed it thus far, but I did want to throw in this little segment at the end here about why I'm so obsessed with vlogs, because obviously I've made such a big shift in my YouTube strategy towards more of the vlog format, and I wanted to explain a little bit more about the benefit, again, like from both my side as a content creator and from the consumer side. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'm just trying to manage the lighting here because we're doing a rare late afternoon recording for me. But again, I just really needed to spend this whole last week getting back my life together, getting back on track after being so sick. And again, that's something you probably wouldn't have known if you didn't listen to this long form podcast. I mean, I did post like one Instagram story about being sick, but now you just get to hear a little bit of the details of my life in conjunction with me doing this episode and talking about this topic. I feel like I've noticed that I have been watching primarily vlogs on YouTube for about a year and a half now. And there's so much to love about the vlog format. Number one, even though it can be very pared back and you can see people with no makeup on, making breakfast, working out, not necessarily always the most picture perfect images, you can still kind of add your own editing style to vlogs and still make it feel curated and elevated if that's what you want. You can make it feel really raw and like you're just on FaceTime with someone if that is more your vibe. There are certain vlogging trends and editing tricks and things like that that do kind of come up in a lot of different people's videos, but it's always still cool to me to see that no two people edit exactly the same. I really think you get to showcase so many different sides of your personality. I personally like watching vlogs that are kind of a mix of montage clips and music, but also catching up with the person, talking to camera, whether they are walking around in New York City, whether they're in their apartment. I personally always think that being out and about is more interesting. I think when there are other people in the videos, they're more interesting. But then again, sometimes I just like watching someone have a Sunday reset in their apartment all by themselves, ordering in Chinese food. It almost feels like we're doing it together, even though we're not. And that's one thing coming out of the pandemic years that I have been kind of more in tune with and more acutely aware of is how easy it can be to get lonely, even when you have no reason to be, or even when it feels like you have so many people around who would support you and would hang out with you. But sometimes being lonely with other people on the internet is almost like hanging out with friends. And I feel like Especially as I get older, I start to see that I have more commitments and responsibilities, and my friends are busier, and it's hard for everyone to always get together. So, whenever I'm craving hangout time with a friend and I can't necessarily like have my friends be on demand, it is really nice to go back to my kind of comfort creators and just put on a vlog and feel like I spent some time with a friend. I know that sounds, I don't know if that sounds pathetic actually, or if maybe other people can relate to it, but that is one of the big reasons that I love vlogs and also podcasts, especially if there are podcasts where the host or hosts are kind of just chatting about life. I mean, those are my favorite types to listen to, so therefore they're also the type that I try to create. Even when I think about the vlog style, I've been trying to apply that to some of my other videos because I think even though I was in a really good filming and recording rhythm for the last 2 years before I posted that October video, I didn't necessarily have a lot of interesting things going on. I could have asked my editor, Sean, to make motion graphics, and sometimes he did, but in terms of B roll, in terms of text overlay and font styles and things like that, it's just amazing to me how much more I'm able to control and how much more I like watching the content back when there are those kind of vlog style elements, even in a video that could just be a sit down video. I've kind of chosen to take these vlog style elements and apply them to some videos I've been wanting to create for a while to create more cohesion in my channel so that even if it's not just a straight up week in my life vlog, you might still click in to watch it because it still feels the same when you click into it. So, some examples of this are I did a video about rediscovering my personal style at age 30, and I tried to approach that in more of like a vlog style format, even though it totally could have been a sit down video. And then last week, I did a pack with me vlog, which again could have just been like a few different positions of sitting in front of the camera and talking to it, but I tried to add overlays and music and make it feel a lot more vloggy than just like I'm sitting here and talking at you. And by the way, if you are watching my podcast on YouTube, I'm aware it's not the most visually interesting thing in the world. I hope that I am on in the background as you are folding laundry or, you know, cleaning the house or whatever it is. And I'm grateful that you're watching me on YouTube because that will help build my watch time, of course, and hopefully eventually qualify for AdSense on this channel too. But anyway, it is something that I am very closely paying attention to and trying to incorporate on my main YouTube channel. Also, I love vlogs because it gives me an easy opportunity as a content creator to kind of just like make note of all the products that I use in any given video because I'm adding links to the description box, as I said earlier, in terms of affiliates. What I actually want to do in the next like week or two, if I have time, it's almost fashion week, so we'll see, would be to go through all of my links in my vlogs and make note of any brands that I've mentioned like two or more times so that I can craft a pitch to a brand and say, hey, I've used your product in my last two recent vlogs. I would love to like talk about working together. I feel like that is such a more thoughtful way to approach a brand than just blindly reaching out and saying I'm interested in working together. To have two examples on hand where I can really pinpoint and say, hey, I used this product in this video, like here's exactly where you can find it. I just think that makes me a more desirable candidate for brand campaigns too. So that's also something I've thought about is how much more easily I can integrate, sponsorships eventually. I'm not really quite there yet. I'm like taking on some partnerships here and there for YouTube, but I'd love to get back up to the point where I'm able to integrate brands I'm already using as brand sponsors on my channel. And that way it doesn't feel out of the blue or inauthentic to my audience because they're like, this is just a random example. But again, my Stanley. I always have my Stanley with me. So if I send Stanley my vlogs and they can see their Tumblr in the background of like every video, it wouldn't be a shock at all to my audience if I were to partner with Stanley. So those are some of the reasons I love vlogs, and I've been trying to incorporate vlog style content into my channel as well. Also, you guys, I'm about to invest in YouTube Premium. I'm like this close. I'm literally so on edge, and it's just because I can't watch these ads anymore. And it's probably a business expense for me, right? To get YouTube Premium. I think I'm about to do it. We probably don't need another streaming service, but like I mentally need this for me. All right, you guys, that's all from me today. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. As a reminder, you can support Create and Consume for free by doing any of the following. You can leave Apple and Spotify ratings and reviews. You can like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you're watching on YouTube. You can follow along at Create and Consume Pod on Instagram and TikTok. You could send this episode to a friend who might enjoy it. And as always, don't forget to check out createandconsumepodcast.com for episode recaps and more. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.